I'm Mike Brewer, and this is the Road to Fulfillment podcast. Every month, you'll hear real stories from real leaders sharing their journey to success and what they found on the road to fulfillment. The Road to Fulfillment podcast, and today I get to talk to my coach and friend, Daryl Perry of Your Level Fitness. Daryl, how in the world are you?
Mike, I'm doing well, and I'm happy to be on this side of the podcast. I'm looking forward to it, man.
Excellent. Well, everybody doesn't know, Daryl has been my coach for quite some time now, and if I can just be brutally honest out of the gate, you are what I would consider a high performance coach that helps people through just about anything, and a little bit about our history. About 2 years ago, we were working together.
Mm-hmm.
I went through some stuff as I was trying to go through a wellness journey of my own.
Mm-hmm.
And one of those things was 2 years ago, I lost my mom. And then in 2022, between friends and family, I lost 7 people, and all while trying to go through a wellness journey. And despite that, working with Daryl, I made tremendous gains, and I still am. And what I hope today we get out of this conversation is people see that from you and see what Daryl Perry and Your Level Fitness is all about. But having said that, having said what you do, who you are, that kind of thing, tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are, not just at Your Level Fitness, but also being a marketing director.
Yeah. Sure. So I started Your Level Fitness 10 years ago. And it was essentially trying to go from a sales career into a marketing career. And fitness was something that I was always interested in from the time I was probably a teenager. And then going up and down with weight, and really kind of looking at it as well. You know, if I change the outside, if I lose the weight, and then later if I bulk up and gain the muscle, then that's going to be what makes me happy. Realized that it just was kind of a never-ending, ongoing thing, and I honestly just thought it was part of life. But at one of the points when I had lost weight, I decided, and this was, my gosh, this is probably coming up near 30 years old. I decided I wanted to get a personal training certification. I had no real, didn't know what I was going to do with it. Worked at a gym in college. Wasn't really sure I wanted to go back and do anything like that. But when I decided I wanted to get out of sales and into marketing, I was like, okay, well, I need a portfolio. This was 2014. Everything was online, social media, blogs, things like that. And I didn't really have a body of work. So this was going to be, I took the leap of faith, leaving my job. I was going to become an entrepreneur, and knew within probably 3 to 4 months that I was not ready to just jump out and do that. So I then ended up landing with a marketing agency as a copywriter and a project manager, and started basically working in tandem. And that is absolutely, that's still what I do to this day. I've had at various points with YLF, I've started doing group fitness, and then adaptive group fitness for adults that have disabilities, since I myself have a physical disability that I've had since birth. Then that moved to one-on-one personal training. I was a running coach for a while as part of this. And then when I started kind of seeing how the whole fitness industry was going about things online, I started to transition into that and got into coaching. But what I noticed as I was working on marketing, and I always studied, like I was always fascinated by food, but like the marketing of food, whether we're talking restaurants or whether we're talking in the grocery store or what have you. So I just, I was always fascinated by that. But then I started to see from a marketing standpoint how the fitness industry was marketing our own insecurities against us. And I'm like, well, you know, I can sit here and be like most of the other fitness professionals and really sell the outcomes and, you know, sell the body transformations and stuff. or I could do things differently. And I think, you know, from our initial conversation before we started working together, everything I do is different from how my philosophy on this stuff. And I have to say, I mean, you touched off at the beginning of the episode here, talking about how you lost 7 people last year. And, you know, one thing, whether we're talking about health and fitness or whether we're talking about anything else that we're trying to develop in life, you know, life for us as individuals, hopefully we have enough time to figure out what it is that we're going to do. So when we're hit with, when we're hit with disaster, when we're hit with loss, you know, a lot of times we're like, oh, well, at some point we give ourselves some arbitrary amount of time. Well, I'm healed from this. I should be able to move forward. And the truth of the matter is some things you can't even get to a point where you can even think about moving forward for months or years even. And a lot of times, you know, you're going to try to think that you're ready to move forward and you're really not. And I think what you find is, as we continue to go through life, is one, the journey is long. Like, life is the journey, I think. And two, we try to do things on our time frame, and our time frames are always seem to be shorter than what it actually takes to do things. So the fact that you have done all the things that you've done, because you've started coaching, you have started podcasts, you've started essentially being a media company. You know, it's amazing to see what all the things that you're doing. But yeah, I mean, for me, it started to become, how can I do something that's more impactful than fitness and weight loss? So when I started looking at this as an inside out process, how can I help people see who they are as individuals and see that they are a quality human being, no matter what they do, as far as, you know, losing weight, getting in shape, whether they start the business, whether they get the promotion. You know, but I've enjoyed building YLF to what it is. It's become way more than just a coaching business. That's part of what I do. But I also have like a media company end where, you know, I have multiple podcasts. I have 3 of them under YLF, and I have other ones, as you know. But then I have I have people contributing. I think it's writing is a skill set that I think a lot of people are nervous about. They just don't think they're good enough to be writers. So one of the things that I wanted to do is I wanted people to not only share their stories through, you know, writing about them, but just their thoughts and opinions. So I have a setup on my site where people can contribute and they can practice writing. And I have some people that have really taken me up on this. I have some people that have done, you know, 1 or 2 pieces, but it's been cool. And I'm working on this whole thing where we're going to be doing meetups next year in person. So I'm working behind the scenes on that. I've got some folks that are kind of working on that with me, but we're getting that together. And within a couple months ago, I launched an on-demand video site just because I was not happy with the direction that social media is going in, both with the reach of content and this whole thing where people now are paying subscriptions to social media platforms so they can see premium content from content creators. So I figured it was time to kind of go off on my own and do that. That at this moment, it's a online on-demand video library. I think I have over 60 videos on there right now, a couple months in, and then all this other stuff. So yeah, my whole thing with health and fitness is I just want people comfortable in their own skin. And we work from there, and I figure out how to get that message out and reinforce it in slightly different ways over and over. So it's pretty much what I do.
Yeah. Just that, right?
Yeah. Just that.
I feel like from the time that we started working together, or I noticed you somewhere, it kind of runs together. Yeah. Your message has shifted from being more of an anti-weight loss industry message to a being comfortable in your own skin message. And maybe it's the same message, and I haven't put that together yet. But was there something that clicked for you? And I know I'm stealing that from you as well when it clicks. But was there something that clicked for you that said, I need to shift from just talking about the weight loss industry to talking
Yeah.
about people being comfortable in their own skin.
So on a one, you're very observant because it did go from being anti-diet to being comfortable in your own skin, and a lot of that, when I first heard about there's an entire anti-diet movement. Like, this is a thing. These are the people that will stand up and thump their chest and say no more diet culture and but basically it's a video podcast, so you guys can see my mannerisms, but like or my hand gestures. So like, what the problem is what I noticed with the anti-diet movement, and I loved a lot of the messaging the first time that I heard about it, was they were basically labeling everything that had to do with dieting, portioning out foods, counting calories, not even calling workouts workouts. We were calling them, like, I don't know, movement, activity, like just everything that had been associated with the diet was now on the bad side of things. And then if it was anti-diet, it was all good. But when I looked at that, I was like, well, dieting fosters extreme behaviors, but all we're doing is taking all of our extreme behaviors from one side of the line and going to the other side, but we're still at the far end. And I really think for each and every one of us, it's finding that middle ground. And it really does start with how we view ourselves, because if you like my concept is that, like, I don't want to change what anybody does. Like, if they follow a particular diet, if they do a particular type of workout, and even beyond health and fitness, like if they chase a certain, professional goal, or they want something personally in their life, like relationships and such, I don't fault them for anything. I just want them to realize that whatever it is that they're chasing isn't going to fulfill them. That fulfillment really does come from within, and it starts with where you are now. There is no, like, because if you're doing this whole thing of once I do this, and once I do this, and once I do this, I'm going to be happy. You're just constantly chasing. And I think what that leads to is we all end up, we get to the later stages in life and we look back at it and we're like, I've got a lot of regrets, and I have nothing to really show for it. Like, I've been, chasing things all my life. So no, that's a really huge observation that you made, because most people don't see that with me. So
Yeah. I think one of the biggest takeaways for me from our time together was, I'm sure you remember, I had just finished that 12-month span on keto, and I had dropped 144 pounds, and I was on top of the world, except for when I wasn't. When it stopped working, and I realized that the problem, I realized that my success wasn't success. It was that whole time it had been cultivating a problem, and really, I guess the problem was exposing the fact that I was riding a wave, and I wasn't learning anything. I wasn't learning anything about myself. I wasn't learning anything about my day-to-day behaviors and actions, and how they were going to affect me long term. And when I plateaued, I didn't know what to do. And one of the biggest things I learned from you was it's more about the day-to-day actions and the habits than it was what the scale said. Because when I lived and died by the scale, I almost fell off completely.
So this is the whole thing with the scale, and everybody likes to see the scale number go down. The problem is when you start trying to lose weight and you're watching that scale and the scale's going down, you're like, yeah. And it's motivating. Like, you want to see how much you can lose next time. And then maybe you get on there, you lose next time, and you keep going and you keep going. And all of a sudden you're like, yeah, you've lost over 100 pounds in a short period of time. And you're like, oh, well, this is cool. This is easy. But then, the weight loss starts to stall, and then it stops. And what's happened is not even just your focus, but your identity. And it's so easy when you're part of online communities where it really does seem like whatever. And it's not just eating and exercise. I mean, like, it could be anything. It could be people that were chasing after crypto and NFTs. It can be people that are aspiring to start podcasts. I mean, like, it's so easy to get wrapped up to where it is the one super really important thing. And it's what you actually, when it's going well, you feel like you're on top of the world. And when it's not going well, you feel like you're just really upset with yourself at the very least, and honestly could even go into a depression because you feel like you're a failure. Now, what I remember when you and I were working on this, and you were very much into keto. Keto had worked well for you, and the conversations we would have was we were trying to get our arms around calories, and a little bit of carbohydrates was very scary to you. And we got to got to the point where you're like, I'm not even getting on the scale, which I think was the best thing that you needed right then and there. Because then gradually, and I want to stress gradually, because I think, when you and I were working on that, it took a couple months for you to really even buy in. Like, even when you were like trying to do it, I could tell that you weren't necessarily bought into it yet. And it's not like you didn't believe what I was saying, but you had all this success on keto. And in order for you to be on keto, you weren't eating the stuff that you were eating that you and I were talking about. Because all we were talking about was shooting for a calorie deficit. And then eventually, when it clicked, good call out to that podcast, then the momentum really started to build. And you were then able to, it was like eating fell into place, exercise fell into place. And it was very gradual. And, a lot of times people will talk about, I know Atomic Habits is a huge book for a lot of people, health and fitness, personal development space. You were habit stacking like everything. You had an entire flow, an entire routine for various parts of your day. And
before I understood what habit stacking was.
Well, and that's true. But here's the interesting part. And, this kind of gets back to what we used to talk about when it was going from keto to calories, which is eventually you're going to get this. It's something that, like, eventually it's going to click for you. And when it does, it's going to be easier to rediscover it when you need to rediscover it. And that's what you have now. Like, so when life does what life does, when life causes, gives us loss, when life gives us, things that we struggle through that take much longer than we want them to, you still have these habits and routines and these structures that you built, and you will go back to them. It's just a matter of when. It's when you're ready, when you're truly ready, not when you should be ready or when you think you might be ready, but when you're truly ready.
Yeah, and I think one of the things, when I look back at the whole process of you and I working together, and I don't know if this was your intention or not, but this is kind of where I ended up. I went from looking at this as a weight loss journey to looking at it nowadays as a wellness journey. And what I mean by that is my focus isn't on losing pounds as much as it is about being comfortable in my skin, the habits, doing the things like strength training Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, getting 10,000 steps in, getting walks in, doing the things I need to do for my mental health. It's gone from that I need to lose weight to I need to be well. And I think that's my biggest takeaway from working with you is that it's not just a weight loss situation. It's being comfortable with who you are situation. And that encompasses way more than just a weight loss journey.
I'm glad that that's what you took from it. I think in the time that you and I worked together, I think you're right. I think I would have gotten there, that's where I wanted you to be eventually. I don't think I would have been able to describe it in the way that I describe it now, where I'm like, I just want you comfortable in your own skin. So I am glad that you've gotten there with that, but I've also noticed with all the other things that you have stepped outside of your comfort zone and really pushed yourself on. It leads to, when you say wellness, I think it's getting into a better place with so many other things, right? It's not just physical. It's not just what you're eating and exercise and all that. It's so many other things. So I've seen the cascade effect and all the stuff that you've been doing. Some of that I think comes from things from when we worked together. Some of that I think is just because you've gone out and you've figured out a number of other things and you're using your skill sets in different ways and you're genuinely curious about things. I think anytime you're curious about, you know, things, circumstances, people, I think it shines through. And I think it leads to you being able to showcase your creativity, which comes out in all the stuff that you do, including this podcast.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Now, we've dug into Mike quite a bit here, but I want to dig into who Daryl Perry is a bit here too. So tell us a little bit about the things you've had to overcome in order to be the, I don't want to say star, but I'm going to say star. You're like an internet star now because of what you've accomplished.
My entire life has been a bonus. I was in a situation where I was born 3 months premature, and I was in a situation where in my household that had happened before, and the other child did not make it past a few days, and I did. And I knew that very early on. So there was always, when I was really little, my ultimate goal was I just wanted to go meet my brother in heaven. This is what I used to tell my parents all the time. I was very shy as a kid, but I had presence. Like if I was presenting in front of the class, I could do it. And I think a lot of times I was channeling my inner macho man, Randy Savage, or trying to think, Rowdy Roddy Piper, any of the wrestlers from like the late 80s that were really good at talking on the microphone.
Yes.
I think I was trying to like see things from outside myself and play a character. And, you know, I will say that now at 41 years old, I'm very comfortable with who I am as a person. There's been, for me, over the last 2.5, 3 years, there's been a lot of loss. There hasn't been as many people leaving the earth, but there's been a lot of people that for one reason or another, we're no longer in each other's lives. And part of that is because I was very much a part of my insecurity as well. I would just be a people pleaser. Like I would do everything that I possibly could to appease people and get them to like me. And when you go that way through life, it doesn't work out really well because you exhaust yourself, you start to become resentful, and it just doesn't work. So, you know, I always had a very hopeful outlook. I always knew how lucky I was. But I really live by the motto of you really do only get one life. And that whole thing that we were talking about with regret, I look at that and I'm like, I don't want to look back and regret the things that I did, but more importantly, I don't want to regret the things that I didn't do. And I didn't want to live in fear. And I feel like for the first, I feel like for a large part of my life, into my adult life, until relatively recently, I lived in fear. And I knew other people that lived in fear. And I could hear the regret in their voice. And I could see, you know what? I was like, I didn't want that for me. So, you know, everything with my life, I'm very fortunate. I work a lot, but I enjoy marketing. I enjoy the storytelling aspect of it. Right now, as you mentioned, I do run all the marketing for all the stuff tied to me. So that's Your Level Fitness. That's all my podcasts. So basically, if you guys go to yourlevelfitness.com or you go to my name, to darylperry.com, which is DARYLPERRY.com, you'll see all the stuff that I do. And there's a lot. And that's my own stuff, and that's getting my message out. And the other thing that I do, because I've also found, you know, I've had various aspects where I've been on my own professionally and I've been operating my business. And honestly, from a coaching standpoint, you and I have talked about this. From a one-on-one capacity, I worked with 80 people, and then I took a break from coaching. But the lifetime I worked with 80 people. So like 2015 to 2020, 2021. And then 2021. No, because I still had one active client that I was working with throughout all this. So, you know, I do all this stuff, but I also I work with a team for an agency that works with a lot of one-off local mom and pop restaurants. And, you know, that gets me in an environment where I get to talk to other creative people that aren't in the industry that most of my other stuff is in. So you get a different perspective. You know, but I've really, I found myself over the last couple of years. I've really connected with myself. I see a big picture, lifelong, not only ambition, but plan on all this stuff that I'm doing. Because this message of getting people comfortable in their own skin, that's not going away. And then for me personally, you know, the hard part, and you probably get this too, when you're a public persona of any kind, you really have to know where the line is. Like, you need to know where the persona, which is just aspects of your personality, and you as a person, actually, where those things, where the line is. Because for me, I might, as a person, I might have 15 layers to me, and the whatever 5, 6, 7 layers that I put out on a podcast or that I put out on a video, that's totally me. But there's a person underneath that not everybody has access to. As a matter of fact, most people don't have access to. So, you know, as I've gotten older, my circle of people that are close to me has gotten really, really small. But I'm doing my thing, man. I see whatever this ends up looking like, if we're talking on laptop screens or if we've got like some crazy Oculus things going on or VR or whatever in the next 50, 60 years, my hope is that science makes it to where we can have the titanium skeletons like Wolverine, and that we're living to we're like 120, 130. Because the stuff that I'm doing here, I'm digging it, and I'm gonna keep doing it for as long as I possibly can. So
My only objection to that is I remember the scene where he got the skeleton,
mm-hmm.
and it seemed like it was really painful. So if we get there, I'm gonna have you do that first, and then you let me know how it went.
That'll be our follow-up episode talking about the titanium skeleton. I agreed. I will absolutely do that. I think
Okay,
that'll be a cool conversation.
perfect. Now you mentioned a few minutes ago people pleasing and living in fear, and you said you got past that.
Yeah.
Is that something that you can quantify and kind of tell us what it took for you to get past living in fear and pleasing people?
Yeah. One, I had to be able to connect with myself. Now, that was, I was getting there before I started therapy. That's another thing, is I started seeing a therapist 2 years ago, a little bit over 2 years ago now. And fortunately, it's a therapist that I have a really good working relationship with. One of my pet peeves is, with all the attention that we give around mental health, which we absolutely should be doing, I think in a social media buzzword type thing, it's kind of positioned at times that you can just sign up for therapy and everything's cured. And that's not how it is. I had to dig through stuff with my therapist. I had to basically examine pretty much every relationship that I've had, friends, family, romantic, all of it. And I saw some patterns, and I see some patterns within myself, and I didn't like that. And it was very exhausting. There was a lot of people pleasing to it. And the thing about people pleasing is, it's like you're doing stuff for others, but you're doing it for very selfish reasons. You're doing it because you feel you have this skewed view of safety. Whereas if everybody else is happy, then I don't have to worry about people being upset. But it's for your own anxious needs. So, and it's like what we talk about with when you're ready, you'll make the change. I looked at it and I was like, you know what, I'm ready to let this go and leave it behind. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't have moments where either those thoughts and those tendencies come back. But I'll tell you what happens even more so is, I think I've probably gone more the other way. Whereas if somebody is trying to manipulate a situation, or if I feel like somebody's trying to take advantage of me now, like, I don't stand for it at all. And I I can cut people off pretty quickly, which is, I look at it and I'm like, I'm just, at this point, I'm kind of aware of it. I'm like, I don't necessarily feel the need to change it. I think in some dynamics, in some relationships, like I'd give a little bit more leeway with it. But yeah, I feel like because I was doing the people pleasing type stuff for so long, is that I've gone pretty far the other way. So I'm trying to find kind of the right middle ground for that. And the reason that I'm so open about stuff like that is, when you talk about success and you talk about fulfillment, there's the other side. There's the darkness that we all kind of go through. When it's grief, when it is loss, when it's mourning for things. These are very strong emotions, and all of us as people, man, woman, whatever you identify as, we all have them. So I think podcasts like this are actually a good place to talk about them, because you can talk about it with a little bit more depth and give a little bit more context around it. Whereas if you're on social media, you're doing a video for, 15, 60 seconds and you just get sound bites. So, but yeah, correct. It's a struggle, man. It really is.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you opening up, and I have to agree with you and just say something about therapy real quick. Mm-hmm. Therapy is available and therapy is good, but to your point, therapy is not the panacea. It is not the end of whatever's going on. And that's part of the reason why I loved getting coaching from you so much, is because the things I could work through in therapy were great, but there's so much work on the other side, to where if I didn't put that work in, that therapy probably wouldn't have meant 20% of what it meant. So I'm glad you brought that up. I went through therapy quite a bit too, and it was work, but then there was also post work on the other side. And I don't think that's what a lot of people realize. It's work. There's a lot of work.
It really, it really is. And given, and this is another thing when you talk about therapy, is the cost of it. And, I've got pretty good insurance, but based on insurance changing, I'm cutting back. I'm going from weekly visits to every other with my therapist. And the main reason I do it is, again, there's a whole nother side of doing all the stuff that we do. I'm a very introspective, aware person. I'm very, I know what I sense. I know what I feel. But I can tell you, working on this stuff, where at times, and this from starting podcasts and from putting content out, you don't always know who and how your message is being received. And you do this day after day, you do this month after month, and you see growth. You get the messages. People tell you, that you're making a difference. And honestly, that helps pull you through. But my therapist, fortunately, we're in kind of the same age group. Her husband does a lot of the internet business type stuff. So she really kind of gets where I'm at. And, it's just been between working with her, and then it's been interesting with my girlfriend, who the way that relationship became as deep as it's gotten was through life throwing us curveballs. And, when you're actually going through stuff and you have somebody that is there with you, and it's not just, it's not just the happy-go-lucky moments, but it's the real life stuff. And again, just letting life kind of unfold, both time moving, it's crazy. And this, because you're one day you're like a teenager in your 20s, and then you blink and you're in your 40s. And then I'm like, the next time I blink, I'm probably going to be in my 70s somewhere. So life moves really fast. It's like we have time, but we don't have time to really waste. So
very true. Yeah. It's interesting. You brought up your girlfriend and having a relationship where you can process things with and go through life with. really believe having strong relationships is a pillar of fulfillment, without a doubt.
It definitely is, and Heather likes when I talk about her on podcasts.
Good, good.
But like, I mean, it's all relationships, right? I look at it, if we're talking about the relationships that we have with other people. You have, I think you have one person that is they're closest to you. They're closer than anybody else. And I use a solar system analogy. So like in this analogy, we are each the sun, the universe, like everything, everything actually revolves around us.
That's great for my ego. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, no, and it is. It's like, then when you think about it, you then have, if you're lucky, you've got one person that is essentially your Mercury that is closest to you in close orbit. And then everybody else, people come in and out of your life at various times. And I think the tricky thing about that is you never know how long somebody's going to be there, and you don't know what capacity they're going to be at. So somebody could be, if we're using our solar system analogy, maybe they're somewhere around Earth and Mars, but given as time goes on, kind of how this is, you get things pulled in one direction or the other, and they go completely off course. Maybe somebody's pushed out into the Kuiper Belt somewhere, and then maybe later on they're pulled in closer to you because of something that goes on. But yeah, relationships are really important, but relationships are really difficult to navigate. And again, not just talking, your romantic ones are included, but when you talk about friends and family and coworkers, and then you throw in all the aspect of people that you meet online, and there's so many people, and how do you cut through the noise? It's crazy, man. There's a lot to it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good. That's a really good analogy. Well, let me ask you this then.
Yeah.
How would you define fulfillment?
Looking at what you have and what you've already accomplished and being happy, but at the same time also knowing that you just want to keep going. I think it's being present in the life that you're in and really enjoying it while enjoying the moment as much as you can, reflecting on the past and working towards the future. But yeah, being in the moment, not really aspiring for stuff or status.
I like that. So kind of blissfully content while still moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. Okay. Well, we've reached the part of the podcast where I like to have a little bit of fun.
Yes.
And I want to give you 5 rapid fire questions that I call the Fast 5, not to be confused with the Fast and Furious franchise. And these are hard questions. Some of them are hard to answer, which kind of is what makes it so fun.
Okay. Cool.
All right. Ready? All right.
Yeah.
First question. If you were to wake up tomorrow, and this is kind of a hard question even to ask because I know you've been in these positions before.
Yeah.
And you found out you lost your job,
and
the Daryl Perry media empire has fallen. Would you feel like a failure?
No. Quick question. It's really not going to change the answer. Do I get to keep everything that I learned doing the stuff that I've done?
Absolutely.
Oh, cool. Yeah, not at all then. Because I could build it back up.
Excellent. All right. Yeah. I like that answer. Okay. If your pay went away from all your current positions, would you still do what you're doing?
Yes.
Okay.
Without a doubt.
What would you say your most meaningful hobby is?
The Men's Mental Health Series podcast. That that started as was going to be a couple episodes for men's mental health awareness for No Shave November. And then I put some feelers out to guys wanting to talk about that. And you guys, like everybody just responded, wanted to be a part of it, and it wound up being an ongoing podcast. And it gets a lot of these conversations going that don't happen, whether it's the conversations that men need to have with themselves, because we aren't connected with ourselves a lot of times. The conversations we need to have with people in our lives, or for the women that listen to that podcast, or, they just start the conversations with the guys in their lives, because there's some pretty gnarly statistics around men, depression, and all that stuff. And one of those conversations, hitting the right set of ears on the right day, is more impactful than anything. So yeah, of everything I do, that's the that's my most impactful hobby, I would say.
Nice. And not that it needs a plug, but if you haven't listened to the Men's Mental Health Series podcast, it's fantastic. It's not a big time commitment, but I will say it is a bandwidth commitment for your mental and emotional bandwidth.
Don't binge listen to those episodes. Like, they are one episode a day, because if you listen anymore, they're pretty heavy. Some of those conversations got very heavy, for sure.
Okay. Next question. What is scarier to Daryl Perry? Success or failure?
I don't. That's an interesting question, because I'm not scared of either of those two things. Success really just shines a light on who you are as a person. And failure, I don't think failure exists. I think the only time that we fail is if we physically cannot, like, we can't do it again, right? Like I said for a while that I with everything else I was working on, I was like, oh, I'm never going to coach again. Give me a couple weeks away from everything and give me a chance to, like, kind of put things together and come up with ideas. And, so I don't think, I think what a lot of people view as failure is just things don't, the thing that they didn't necessarily know how to do didn't go the way that they thought it was going to go. And it's like, you're just, you're just figuring things out. So I don't fear either of those, I don't think.
I love that. That is good. Yeah. Okay. Now to the final question of the podcast. And this question almost hinges on whether or not you've seen the movie The Angriest Man in Brooklyn. You ever heard of that movie? It is.
I've not.
Okay. So basically the premise of the movie is, and this is no spoilers, it's what they give away in the trailer. The man goes to the doctor, and he is definitely the angriest man in Brooklyn. And he is hated so much because of the way he acts that his doctor gets frustrated with him, who is Mila Kunis, by the way, and tells him that he has 90 minutes to live.
Yes.
And for some reason, his name's evading me. The actor who committed suicide, who played Mrs. Doubtfire.
Okay.
Yeah. The name's
Robin Williams. Okay.
Robin Williams, yes. Yeah. He's the angriest man in Brooklyn.
Okay.
So then he leaves, and the rest of the movie is how the next 90 minutes and then eventually the rest of his, short period of time unfolds. So my question is to you. You go to the doctor, and through no fault of your own, you weren't a jerk to the doctor, but you find out that you have 90 minutes to live. How do you spend that 90 minutes?
I go through my phone and I call everybody, and I tell them what I learned in our connection, our time together, our relationship. I heard something once that the value of our relationships, all of our relationships, is what we've learned from them. So I think that's what I would do. I would call through. I would call through my phone book, and I would just tell everybody what I learned from them and what that actually has meant for me. Because and I can tell you for you, what I learned from you is just the ability to stick with something until it clicks. And then once it clicks, and once you had that kind of belief, man, like you just, there was a certain type of resilience to you that I thought was very refreshing, and I was glad to see it come out of you in the way that it did when we were working together. That's what I would do if I had 90 minutes.
Okay. All right. Well, I love that answer. Yeah. Okay. Well, we're almost to the end of the time, but tell us, one, where we can find you, and two, what you're doing and what's next for Daryl Perry and Your Level Fitness.
So best places to find me online would be online. So darylperry.com. That's DARLPERRY.com, or yourlevelfitness.com, all spelled out.
You're not giving your home address? Is that
I'm not giving my home address.
Oh,
no.
Okay.
No. Thanks to the internet, you can't really do that because some people don't want to do that.
That is correct.
But no, what I'm working on right now, I'm actually for YLF, everything with, I mentioned coaching, but also the challenge that I have for YLF 365. I'm gearing up for, things are going now, but it's building more momentum towards the end of the year and new year. And again, 2024, getting some of the in-person events together. I think I can do some small scale ones now if I wanted to, but got some bigger things coming next year. And then continuing to do the on-demand platform. I'm finding that that's actually been a very fun thing to do because it's something different. You have to like explain to people why they would subscribe to watch you put video. Well, you put videos like that out everywhere. Yeah, but the problem is when I put them out on social media, you scroll, like I tell you one thing and then you see other messages contradicting what I'm saying, or I just get lost in the noise. So when you sign up and you do this, you know, everything's served up to you. There's recommended videos. You click on one thing, you start one place, you end up somewhere else, and you know what you're getting, and you watched on your time. So, so that's going. But I'm just I'm doing my thing and chilling, hanging out, spending some time with my puppy and my girlfriend when I can see her. So
nice. I love it. All right. Well, Daryl, thank you. And thank you. I would not be where I am without you. And I want everyone to notice that. And I want everybody to see that and see who you are. So your time today was wonderful and I really appreciate it.
Mike, I appreciate all that. I love seeing where you're taking all these things. I think you've got a unique perspective. I think, again, curiosity is something that that really shines through with you. And I'm glad to be a part of it, man. And anytime we can do a podcast together, let me know and we'll get it together. So I appreciate it.
Let's do it. Thank you.